Alex T. Steffen is best-selling author, leadership expert, and one of the best public speakers I can think of. He taught me a lot on public speaking, leadership, and he literally contributed a big part of the way I lead today. There's a lot of leadership advice out there. However, for me, it feels it lacks a bit of depth, it lacks roundedness. And what is unique about Alex's approach is that he brings this roundedness, that he brings this holistic approach to leadership. And this is what he's going to convey in this episode. Also, if you want to learn more about a very unique concept, the concept of adaptive intelligence and how it relates to great leaders, tune in. So amazing to have you here, Alex.
Thank you.
Glad we know each other since a while, since a long time, since a couple of years, man. So thinking it would be awesome to have this conversation here and share it with you guys and just like have a good jam. That's basically the intention.
I am looking forward, like we always do.
Exactly. So welcome, Alex. How have you been?
Thanks. Very good. Working hard on the next moves, and I guess it's working hard has a tiny notion of suffering to some people, as in I have to put in a ton of work to make the next thing happen. But for me, it's mostly, I'm glad actually, it's mostly positive. It's exciting. It is full of energy rather than energy draining. So when I say this, I'm just super, super pumped about the next moves. And now summer is here. It's hot. People are, maybe a little bit like, where's the next lake? Where's the next, can I go to the ocean?
You're in Berlin right now, or?
I'm in Berlin, nowhere close to the ocean, close to lakes, I guess. But this is a great time to, to hustle, to also, work hard in the best sense of the word.
Yeah. Yes. You mentioned suffering as of we connotate suffering with hard work or with lots of work. What do you think that is?
Hard work? What is hard work?
Oh yeah. Why is it connotated to suffering in the general sense?
I mean, there's a lot of statistics, but obviously we've crafted a society that isn't always kind to us. And I say this with the full awareness that the previous societies, for the majority of people, were probably not anywhere better than this. But we've crafted a society that's obviously built on capitalism, which I'm not against at all. It requires from people that they put in work to create value for other people to then receive something in return. And I think that's a great system in theory. There's obviously problems with it, but I do think that we've crafted a society where the word hustle, like we understand it, you and I, the entrepreneurial hustle that can be connotated positively, is not the experience of most people. Most people are at their work. They might be not as empowered as they would like to be. They are not as autonomous as they'd like to be. And I think autonomy and deciding your own path, deciding your next moves, your choices, is a big deal in happiness. And when you can't do that for a longer period of time, there's some form of suffering. It might not be the physical pain that we associate with, oh my God, I just, crashed my bike and my arm's broken and I'm suffering. But it is maybe equally, if not more, damaging to the soul.
Of course, yes. And I think especially right now, I mean, like coming out of these last two and a half years, I feel also have a lot of conversation with people, and I feel and I see and observe a lot of people really rethinking what they are doing in their life and what they want to do with their life. And I even read some stats the other day that more people than ever quit their job.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? Have you come across that?
It is. And when we talk about the autonomy from just a minute ago, maybe a more accurate word is agency, right? They take full agency and they make a choice that represents more of what they are, even if it means stepping into the unknown. And that comes with a whole bunch of other problems, right? And challenges. But I think they're reclaiming agency that they haven't felt over some time. I have a ton of friends that are going through this, have gone through it, and are always saying the same things, right? I feel like this is not fulfilling me. And this is where it links back to the societal part, where we've crafted a society to make everything go around, right? We need an income to pay the rent, to create a life that we want, to whatever, raise the kids, travel. And it brings us in some form of dependency. And that can mean that you are losing agency, and then people are reclaiming it and to try to gain effectively, I think, more happiness.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. What's your experience? Like, you have a lot of agency. I think that's one of the things that I value so much in our conversations, is that you lead yourself, you make choices that are, good for you in whatever state you're in, meaning you're choosing them specifically to have a certain experience, but also to grow. And this is one of the things that I notice in you and have noticed in you for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think, a very leading value of mine, and I spent quite a fair amount of time and intention and capacity actually on it, reflecting upon constantly, like freedom actually. And I've done that like from the beginning actually. I realized though, especially the more I progressed, that in order to you have to work for that as well in order to claim it. And it doesn't mean there's not freedom. You have to put the time, the dedication, the hours to hone any type of skill in order to just maximize the freedom. And I think when I even started out in my entrepreneurship career, I kind of went maybe a bit blind into just really like, okay, I want to be free. This is not what I'm going to do. But I realized pretty fast it's not the way. I especially as a rookie, especially if you don't know anything and you don't really are capable of providing value. And in order to provide value, you need to, in my experience, you need to put time in, intention, and work. So there's always this balance to it, I feel. Yeah, so that's I try to balance it. But if I can choose when to put the time, when I'm most inspired, sometimes that's in the middle of the night and I do a night shift, sometimes in the morning. So I can choose this. I remember when I had had one full-time job, and it was 9 to 5 basically. And I remember I had always this slunch, like this low energy phase during the afternoon. And I just was so unproductive. I was so freaking unproductive. And that was a major reason why I wanted to get out of it and to have this agency, as you call it.
It's interesting because it teaches us one thing. I think this is a very, very big factor of inefficiency in society, is that we all are supposed to work at the same time. We do recognize very much, and scientists will confirm this, that people have different clocks.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Some people are night people, some people are day people. I had periods where I was one, and then periods where I was another. And another very important point of this is there's nuances in between that too. It's not just night people, day people, but it might be that you're hyper productive between 7 and 9:30, and or vaguely that time. And then maybe if you understand yourself, if you read yourself, if you then respond to reading yourself and time a break in that moment, you get a boost of energy, and you'll never have a down in the afternoon. And maybe you would then have another time of creativity or of a certain type of effectiveness, maybe at 6 p.m.
Yes.
But it just sucks. It's just inconvenient that everybody's supposed to do 9 to 5, be effective for calls, for all these specific formatted things at these specific times. And then the next layer of problems is when, especially in larger firms, they're global, and people work from San Francisco with their colleagues in London.
True.
And are supposed to have calls. I had this conversation this morning. Are supposed to have calls at their 7 a.m. because otherwise they can't reach their partners, clients, colleagues.
Yeah.
And so with new forms of work, with a transition into new systems, we will learn to adapt and understand that we can be way more effective if we customize the experience of work, customize the experience of creating this value that you talked about.
Exactly. Yeah. What are you right now? Morning or evening person? Or what's your ideal sketch you found for yourself?
I shifted quite a lot. And the most important factor of it is my sleep. I noticed that if I get a consistent amount of 8 hours of sleep, that's a determining factor. And then when you talk about, morning routines or being effective in the morning, what it really asks you to do, if you're consistent and if you're, let's say, wise with that whole choice, it means you actually need an evening routine. Because let's assume you need these 8 hours of sleep like I do, and you also want to catch some type of creative time. Let's just assume that's me in this current period of time around 8 a.m. Writing time. Then you got to be consistent with going to bed. And that means maybe making tough choices with your friends or with partners and going, I can't right now. This is more important to me because I choose to write, because I choose to take that client call. And I'm saying this with a history of having meetings not before 10. So I made it a point on the other side of the day, kind of made it a point to craft my freedom and my luxury of sleep by just not having meetings until 10. And then I could go to bed whenever.
Yes.
But these days, it's really important for me to get the sleep and take advantage of the morning creative time.
Yes, this is such an important factor. And I keep on learning it and relearning it. And sometimes you forget then again. And one of the major things I shifted was quite recently, is when to have my last meal. Because this affects as well your sleep quality. Like as I'm spending a lot of time in Spain, like where like everybody eats around 10 basically. But if I want to be in bed at 10 or 11, it's not the best. So I try to, especially during my peak efficient time, work time, I try to be eat around 7, 8-ish. And I'm coming back to the German, having dinner at 5 p.m. or so.
It brings us to a very vital leadership aspect. And I think that is your own energy management.
Yes.
And that can be your energy, as in how you respond to difficulties in any kind, stress resistance, this kind of thing. But what you're referring to is another aspect of it, which is equally important, which is, biological markers, right? Am I going to tolerate my low energy or my reduced sleep quality by eating late, right? Or by eating just before exercise or just before the meeting or something like this?
Exactly.
Am I willing to take that risk? Obviously, that needs a lot of consciousness, because a lot of us at certain stages will not be aware that our energy dropped because we just had that chocolate bar or something, or because we're addicted to coffee and we haven't had it.
Yes.
But if we are, and if we like to improve in this area, which I know very well you do, which I do as well, then I think there's a lot of agency in your energy management, and that then affects how well you lead. I certainly believe so, because if you are affected, let's say you're more tired, then biologically proven, you cannot respond to challenges in the same way that if you have a resilient response, right? You're well nourished, you have had sleep, etc. And then other people are going to be affected, right? You might be short-tempered.
Yes.
You might be not willing to make a change just because of your biological, how you're affected by your biology. So interesting.
So true. Like having a lack of sleep or low sleep quality affects the general outlook to life. And my days are so much better if I really have a good sleep than the ones I don't. It's literally, and yeah, as you say, your interactions are different, and also you see more opportunity, and in turn, like create more value within a company, for yourself, or for other people, and yeah, that's very important. You mentioned leadership quite a bit, and I know this is your how we say in German, Steckenpferd.
Yeah, the main topic.
So I'm curious, how do you define it? Also, in contrast, I'm going to throw it in there, but to power, because I think it's a common connection most people have.
Yeah, I want to start that. That's a big topic, so we're going to probably talk a little bit about this. I want to start. Everybody listen to this. Like, you can imagine people that are part of two archetypes. To make it very simple, obviously there's numerous archetypes, but there's two archetypes. You have a person that's superior, or somebody you potentially could look up to, somebody who's in some type a leader of thoughts, a leader of an organization, a leader of you and your next steps. And let's take the first archetype. That's the person that's responsive to what's happening. They might also be kind of stressed out by all the things that are happening, right? New modes of working, spontaneous changes in operation, surprises because they haven't prepared themselves mentally. And they are also maybe more of a control person, right? They like their plans. They've done things a certain way, and they like to keep it that way because their worldview says that if we continue that way, then we build a safe environment and a consistency in terms of what we deliver. Mm-hmm. Right. And the question is this person inspiring to you, right? If you're after safety, maybe that person is inspiring to you. They might not drag you, or they might not pull you up energetically, right? And then contrast that with a person that is, that has built this inner resilience, that can respond to things spontaneously, that is motivating you, that's giving you energy, and that's effectively inspiring you, right? And that is a leader that I think people are looking up to because they can literally pull the energy towards a mission, towards a next step, towards a responsibility, right?
Yes.
And this need for control versus this, let's say, more fluid way of leading is really what I'm spending a lot of my time on. And this brings us very quickly to power. Before we do that, maybe I want to share my definition of leadership, like you said. So leadership consists of attributes and competencies. Competencies are pretty clear, right? You need certain skills, right? Do you have the communication skills to effectively lead a conversation and get a certain result, right? Attributes are more fluid. They're like personality traits, right? Are you more of a loud person, or are you more of a listener, right? And some of these overlap, right? You can train your listening skills, but not all competencies or skills or attributes, and not all attributes are skills. But to make it simple, you need attributes and you need competencies that allow you to direct, meaning to influence people and processes, or people and systems. Mm-hmm. So you're leading people, but you're also changing systems. If you lead, you're changing systems, right? If you manage, you're keeping things the same. If you're leading, you're effectively changing things.
Are you creating the systems then? A leader is creating systems?
You're creating or you're changing, right?
Okay.
And you do all of that with a certain goal in mind. So you want to make a better society or create a certain business value. So in summary, to have these aspects really combined, because we're really branched out a little bit here, is you need competencies and attributes to lead people and systems for an outcome, often in the areas of business value or societal value, to make it simple, right? And these are abstract concepts, but that's my definition of leadership. And as I said, it's different to management, right? It's different to keeping things running. And this really brings us to the contrast to power, because in the past, we've had a ton of leaders, and we all have experienced leaders that are educated with traditional, ideas of power. And those ideas will probably not go away because we're human and we're fallible. So we will seek power. We will go after power, the power dynamics, being louder, exerting violence to achieve a certain goal. It'll not go away completely, unfortunately. I don't think so. But power dynamics have shifted. We've realized in a modern society that the inspiring leader can be more effective in leading organizations, in leading people and leading ideas and changing things. And as long as they can combine the skills and attributes that make them what some people feel like an inspiring leader or a pioneer or a conscious leader, whatever you want to call that, a person that doesn't rely on power exertion, as in violence, loudness, this kind of thing, but they rely on something completely different. And that brings us a little bit back to what we said earlier. Management of energy will allow you true influence. Because let's take an example. Take anybody that's ruled a country as a monarch or as a power exerting, as a potentially violent person. That power is only their power as long as they can get the systems in place that keep the power, meaning they have control over the military, or they have control over intelligence systems that, take whoever is bad in their eyes, the deceivers, the rebels, take them out of society, keep them low, put them in prisons. They can only keep the power if they keep exerting, this violence in whatever form. But true power of, does a person want to be influenced by me? Am I pulling a group, or am I pushing them in my certain way of thinking? That comes from, first, the influence that you have if you are in control of your own energy. And then people, this is something that's very subtle to notice, but we all notice it really well. We're antennas for whether a person is inspiring. And there's actually 4 P's that I want to share, but in a minute. And only then, based on this ability to have this energy management, that's when trust is built. And that trust is built on yet another set of competencies and attributes that we can go into. But that's second to first being a person that can manage their own energy, right? Emotional intelligence. So to bring it all back, because this can still branch out into so many areas.
Yeah.
Leadership, obviously, attributes and competencies to lead people and system, or to influence people and systems for a certain goal. And so if that's voluntary, if that followership of the leader is voluntary, you have true power. The other power is temporary. And it's certainly effective if you can bring up the resources to keep that power alive. But it will always be temporary, because at some point people are sick of it, right? That person leaving the job that you said earlier, that person's gone. You can't have that person as a resource anymore.
So could you sum it up? Basically, the involuntary leadership is more of a short-term approach.
Oh yeah, 100%.
The voluntary.
The short term can be decades, right? Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
We've had so many autocrats, and we're in a political field now broadly, but this is the same in companies, right? We have autocratic company leaders, right? And they get, at some point, they might be very effective for a period of time, and then they kept in that role because they increase shareholder value, for example. And people find it very hard to take them out, even though they create a lot of damage, maybe on the psychological level of the employees, or on other levels. But at some point, that time will come, and it's inevitable, because the world moves forward, technology moves forward, and with that, there will always be new players in the market. There will always be new forms of competition, and these autocrats tend to be people that are holding on to power, so they tend to conserve systems rather than innovate on systems, because that would diminish their power. It's exactly part of the logic. And so inevitably, at some point, innovation will kill them, because some people will find a smarter way to orchestrate a new episode, a new period, a new phase of, in this case, the economy.
Yeah. And I mean, also what I think kept these systems longer in place in the past than now, I feel, is a lack of information exchange. We're moving right now. We're moving into times where the information exchange is just faster. So I feel like if you're employed in a let's say autocratic kind of very by a bad leader, so to speak, then you probably heard of other leaders, other companies which are much better. So you might think about, hey, maybe I'm gonna change. So yeah, that I think accelerates this process as well. What's the ideal leadership? Can you extrapolate where society goes? What's the perfect form of leadership? Is there something?
I don't think there is. And I tell this from my personal experience of traveling quite a lot in the past. I had the amazing opportunity to live in South America. I had the amazing opportunity to live in North America, in Eastern Europe, in Western Europe, even a short time in Southern Europe, and doing projects here and there, even in Africa. But obviously the living in a place gives you a way bigger and more reliable idea of society and the dynamics of society, right? Mm-hmm. As does long-term interaction or partnership with people from a different culture. And so there's a sense in different nations of what a primary drive is, or what a very fundamental value is, and that affects leadership or the desire for leadership. Right. And many people in the past have said that, for example, in Russia, they don't necessarily, as a society, they're not necessarily used to what we value in democracy in some Western countries. Hence, you can't just say, this is better for you. You're better off with a clean democracy, as whoever understands, right? There's obviously different democracies. There's a North American model that's rooted on two big parties, or let's say the American model. as based on two big parties. That's one form of democracy. I think most European nations have a different idea of what the minimum requirements for a democratic state are, or for a multi-party state. But this is obviously branching off into details. But our Western European society here, we are much more open and request much more of that contribution in the political discourse, where other nations, and I think Russia is one of them, they'd much rather have a strong figure on top. So to your question, I can't answer what's the ideal. I can only give you my, how I've been raised, how I've been influenced by my society. And I think I do value a lot the freedom that we get from the style of democracy that we have. And I think we benefit hugely from a more open definition of leadership. In this case, again, political, but this branches into obviously the firm as well, having the ability to contribute to decision-making in firms. And that comes at a huge cost. When people say, oh, it's so easy for China to make decision X, Y, Z because one person is deciding it like this, right? This is simplified. Of course, they also have their power architecture, but effectively it's much quicker because there's no political discourse. There's no parliament that has to debate, form documents, figure out the whole process and then present it to somebody, then vote on it, and then write it into law, the whole thing, right? And this goes for companies as well. A company that's more led by a strong figure that can make decisions quickly. Look at maybe Tesla, that will make decisions much faster. And they might be good decisions and they might not be good decisions for certain stakeholders, right? And then a more, let's say, European, without making it black and white, but a more European design might be that you have to go through all kinds of levels and discussions and gremiums that give approval or that tell you, change that, otherwise I won't be on board. And without them on board, you can't go ahead. So it's always ups and downs because complexity, let's say the freedom and the contribution to your opinion comes with complexity.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I mean, I see it's balance. I had yesterday a beautiful conversation around a different topic, but I see parallels and it all leads back to balance. I mean, there's some benefits into a more conservative, slower, more therefore more thought through process, which involves more parties, and then there's also some benefits into a faster process, more direct, straightforward, one type of leadership or single leadership approach.
Different times require different responses, but there's one thing that you said, and I've recently contemplated a lot this word balance. And maybe if I may, I'm going to share my maybe a bit polarizing, but I think certainly important counterweight to our love for balance. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to have this discourse with more people to see how this resonates with more people and see how I can update my thinking here. The idea is basically this: I keep hearing balance, right? And there's some resistance to it, like a little bit of resistance every time I hear it. And I'm like, is the world really in balance? Like, do we really need this balance? Is this the truth? Like, is this the organic thing behind the word, right? Is that really happening? And obviously it's attractive. Like, you can definitely say balance is better than, let's say, chaos, right? So I'd always pick, balance over chaos. But is that really the debate? And then my thinking goes, balance is maybe a bit of an overused word. And then I tested that assumption because everything needs to be balanced. But looking out there, nothing is in balance, literally nothing. So are we forcing something? And then I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong about, aiming for it. It's a goal. You want more peace. You want more contentness, more connection. That might all be associated with balance. And then people often say this thing, yeah, but nature's in balance. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, good argument, because if nature's in balance, that's very often a very good indicator that might be a good guide for us, right? For us to follow that path as well. But then I'm thinking, hold on, there's different levels to this, right? We might be looking at a tree. I'm looking out the window right now, looking at a tree, and we all go, oh, this tree's in balance, right? It's floating in the wind. It's all happy, it's summer, it's green, it's flourishing. It's in balance, right? Nature is in balance. It's happy and it's working well. But if you look at the micro level, you go zoom in and you see all these bugs and bacteria and little organisms, they're all fighting. They're all like battling each other, killing each other, eating each other, trying to dominate, trying to be the dominant species, and what to us looks like this super nice balanced thing on this helicopter view or outside view on a micro level is this massive, crazy fight. That is not at all balanced. Not at all, right? And the same thing, you can say the same thing about our bodies, right? You look healthy, you look in balance, you've done your Qigong this morning, I guess, and you're doing absolutely well. You're in balance, I'm guessing, right? You have great conversations with great people that are updating your mind and so on. But inside, there's a war going on that if you were in between, all you can do is pick up your own weapon and join the fight because somebody would want to slaughter you, right? On that micro level. So I thought what's really happening is a total response, like an immediate response and the ability to immediately respond at any given time, which is exactly what you said earlier, right? Different times require different responses. So what I think my new idea of balance is not this floaty, I'm all good feeling, but it's more, I know what's happening right now, and I'm prepared for a number of scenarios that might be happening next. And so when that happens next, I can float into that area with much more ease, respond better, be more effective, and be better set up effectively. So that is a better idea of.
I like that. No, I and that aligns with, you probably heard of or you read it, Lao Tzu, Tao Te Ching.
Yes, I've heard it.
And it's basically like Lao Tzu was a advisor to the emperor, and he basically retrieved, and he was just like sitting there thinking and philosophizing, and he came up with this book, as the story goes, like as his last work. And I think it's even more printed than the Bible. It's massive, this book, and it's beautifully written. It's a bit cryptic because you have these paragraphs, where you have to contemplate upon. But basically, the sense is what he communicates is the middle way, in a way balance. But from what I get out of it, he says it in a similar way than you. Balance is an ideal scenario. Everything in nature tends to move towards it. However, it always depends on the zooming factor, how balanced that thing actually is. If I zoom completely out and have perceive everything, then of course that whole thing is kind of wobbling around and always into balance. It's kind of the organism way of looking at the world versus the kind of the creator model of world like we have it in the West. But that everything seems to be in balance. But if you zoom in, there's always like imbalances, which tend to move always towards homeostasis, towards balance. And bring that back to leadership, and a little bit between the lines, that's what you get out of his book and his stuff, is that great leader is aware of the balance beyond, but he is very present, so to speak, and very quick and adept to what is presented right now with his actions. And he or she is therefore also prepared and knows, okay, this is the right action. And sometimes it takes a stronger action that direction, a stronger action that direction. But it's always like he has always this bigger picture in mind. That's what I got out of it. And I feel this is very aligned with what you said.
I love it. This is super resonates a lot. And this is effectively what you're saying is adaptive intelligence, right? Can I respond?
I'm getting there. Right. That was my next question to you. Okay. So yeah, elaborate on that. I was reading it in your book and I found it a very fascinating concept. AQ, adaptive intelligence.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me, to the point where I've written an entire book on it, and I'm still fascinated by it, which, isn't always a given. Anybody who's written a book, who's listening to this, it's very frequent that you write a book and then afterwards you cannot hear or talk about this topic anymore. So it's fascinating to me that I'm not right now saturated with the topic. It's still so interesting. And maybe one of the reasons it's interesting is because both the economy, I should say all three, the economy, social science, but also, neuroscience, all talk about and develop this idea of adaptive intelligence in their own way, right? We talk about agility in the economy, but really you don't have agility unless you have adaptive intelligence. And we'll go into, what that means. We already have the example, right, of you saying, from balance, are you able to adapt, right? Quick enough to be effective. That's really it, right? And then in neuroscience, it has to do with a bunch of factors, but it has to do primarily with stress, or they say distress abilities, right? How do you? It's just called distress, I guess, in science, but we can just say stress to make it simple. So, do you have a big stress tolerance? Right? Tolerance, obviously, meaning how you respond to it, right? How long does it take for me to poke you until you go, cut it out, dude? Like, what's wrong with you, right? Or are you taking it with humor? Are you not even noticing it because you're just zen, these things? Or do you see potentially even the value in the poke? Right? Even though it's annoying you, the poke might be of greater value to something else. So you're tolerating it for the greater good, right? So all of these options are there for you.
And there's the option to consciously react to the poke, or
correct,
act upon the poke. Maybe the person who pokes you needs to learn something.
Right, 100%. And that's the beauty. So adaptive intelligence is really, I'm going to bridge actually to the other forms of intelligence that we know and talk about a lot. Classic intelligence, IQ, right? Our society, Western society, builds a lot on it. We always have a IQ fetish. If you're so smart, you are so an expert in this. I trust you because you have all these certificates, and you've proven that you can solve this riddle in like 2 seconds. Wow. And it's cool. Obviously, these are great abilities of the brain. So I don't want to discredit them, but I think our society has a fetish for that. And that's not a problem per se. It only becomes a problem when we realize that it's not the only intelligence we need in order to cope with the world that we're in, especially this super fast moving, digital, surprising world. And I guess that the next in line is emotional intelligence, right? In recent 10, 15 years, people have really, really gained a lot of awareness for that and realized how important it is to communicate, to know yourself. We've kind of covered it earlier a little bit, right? Emotional intelligence is a fundamental part of leadership and a fundamental part of being effective as a communicator, as a partner, as a friend, and also being kind to yourself and not turn yourself into a self-judging person. And then comes the need for molding the world, changing the world, stepping into the future and creating something that aligns with what our times are giving us, right? Coping with the future effectively. And that's number three, and that's adaptive intelligence. And once we understand that the three of them are equally important, and then now we can come back to balance, maybe, to balance them out, even though I don't say they all need to be 33% at all times, different times, different measures, but to kind of increase our awareness and competencies in emotional intelligence relative to just IQ and also adaptive intelligence, then I think we're going to be much more effective as leaders, also as husbands and wives and parents and so on. That's a big one, I think.
Do you have any practices or any techniques that you teach or that you give people in order to train this?
Yeah. Yes. There's a ton. And, some of them are age old, like they're not anything surprising, but the connection of a practice to your ability to be, to have, for example, distress tolerance, the biological term for not freaking out after a second of being annoyed by something. And this might be an idea, right? Your worldview might be things should be this or that way. And if somebody shows up and says, yeah, but I think things could be different, and you are not able to have a debate, that's already a flaw in today's society, because you might not be able to have a constructive outcome, right? So they might be very simple things like that exact thing, which is practicing debate, right? Taking another person's viewpoint and just arguing out of that viewpoint for a moment, just for the sake of practice. You don't have to live with that viewpoint for the rest of your life. It's just about having a constructive conversation, knowing that the world isn't full of people that only think what you think, right?
Yeah.
That only see reality like you see it. These are very simple things, because
basically that, if I break it down, that would be like a practicing stress in a way, no? And the way this is like, okay, like putting myself intentionally into a stressful situation where people are in a debate where there's opposing views, and I basically practice my response towards it.
100%. And all of the things that I'm going to share with you are going to follow the same pattern, right? I know that you have, and probably still do, experimented with, ice baths and breath work, right? And so this is now becoming, more popular, but it's been practiced for, I believe, centuries, if not millennia. And the power of it is so simple. Anybody can do it. You don't have to, buy ice and create a pot or something where you sink in and do all this maybe dreadful to some people experience. It's very simple. You can get up and take a shower, normal shower, and then at the end of it, you just turn it ice cold, and you get 25 seconds or a minute of ice cold. What it does is it does what you just said. It gives you that shock. It gives you that stepping out of your comfort zone, doing something that annoys you for a short time, but it trains that muscle of not reacting right away.
Yeah, it's basically training your vagus nerve,
exactly
control, basically.
That's the cool thing. We now have so much at our disposal, so much biology that backs that up. So it's not just some cool hippie, stuff. These are scientific things that can train our minds. And if we realize that, we have so much power.
Yes.
And so how I always think about this is I step out of the shower, and I do this every morning. Like for me, that's a routine. I can't even step out of the shower having just had warm water. It feels weird.
I think it's missing.
Missing something. But besides that, I step out of the shower, and let's say I go outside and I have an experience that annoys me, right? How quickly will I turn a downward spiral? How quickly will I feel annoyed? How quickly will I maybe respond in an unkind way? Well, if I've already trained that muscle of responding to something that stresses me in a constructive way, then I'm going to last much longer until I snap, right? And this applies to anything, an unkind person bugging you, you're already halfway to work and you realize you forgot a really important document that you don't have digitally, right? And you're like, God damn it, I needed this. This is so annoying, or this kind of thing. But you'll cope much better, and you find more creative and more constructive solutions to that thing that inevitably going to happen anyways, right? We're going to run into trouble, but how do we respond is going to give us power, and that brings us all the way back to the real power, right? That's why we talked about it in the beginning as a mechanism of coping with your own emotions.
Exactly.
People see that and they respond to that. We're all energy, right? We're affecting each other's energy, and people feel inspired if we can cope with our own emotions. And it brings us to that inspiring leader archetype, right? If a person has that plan, can't think of anything outside their plan, and if something that disrupts that plan happens, they snap and they go super annoyed and they lash out at you, you're not going to find that person inspiring. You're going to leave that company inevitably, right?
Of course.
Versus archetype type 2, who inspires you.
Exactly. Yeah. I think a big part of it is also, all these practices, they do it, like it's also getting in tune with your body, with your emotions, with your nervous system. How aware are you? And that's also a spectrum of, like, there's a lot of people who are very aware, and there's a lot of people who are not aware at all, not connected. And I think that's these practices they train to just get more in your body, just feel. And the more you are capable of feeling your emotions, the easier it is to handle situations when there's an emotion coming up. They're like, okay, I know about this, so you kind of can deal better with it and can act versus react better. Yeah.
So much. Yeah, super aligned. I love that. And I think, you're somebody that I look up to for this, right? The reason that I'm sure you've had people call you like in the zone, Zen, in the moment, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I don't think it's primarily a personality trait, even though that helps, of course. But I think it's part of practice.
It's training. It's practice.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%. Yeah. It's like we said before as well, like it's practice, putting yourself into these situations and so on, observing the mind. And I mean, also for me, it's a lot of meditation practice that helped me to become aware.
This is such an interesting, part of this conversation, because some people that meet me now will not believe this, but I've been a complete control freak especially early in my 20s. And this comes out of a number of reasons, including my childhood, also my personality, probably also certain traumas. It doesn't really matter where it came from. I was pretty I needed things to be a certain way. And when I didn't go that way, I was bitter very quickly. And oftentimes these days, people go up to me and they're like, wow, you cope with that so well. Are you always like that? And I can, because I know my previous self, I can relate how that training needed to happen. And it wasn't always conscious training. It was just a journey over time, including some, directed training to improve myself in that area, but also a lot of just vague things that trained it on the way. Yeah. But I know that it needed all of that to get to a place where I'm more effective now. It's not only about better energy, it's about being effective. Exactly. And I think this hopefully resonates with the people that need some kind of KPI, like some measurable thing, which is fine. This is very measurable, that if you respond more often in a better, in a kinder, in a more effective, in a more constructive way, you will get to your results quicker. And so beautiful.
Do you have any practice that you do on a regular basis that helps you also to improve that even?
I mean, there's a number of practices that I do from time to time. I don't have one practice that I do consistently my life, but among those is yoga. I think yoga is very effective. I don't think we need to present to people the arguments why yoga works. Another one that you love, actually, I think you were the one inspiring me initially to dig deeper into this, is Qigong, which, for those people that are sitting around maybe thinking yoga is too boring or whatever, what people say, too calm. Qigong might be a nicer way of bringing movement and action into a very effective practice. We mentioned breath work. Breath work is super nice to affect your vagus nerve, to influence the way your whole system, your energy system works. That's super effective. Then practices, like I said, in the morning, just really getting into the conflict in a way. There's another one I love that's a bit harder to do, but I do encourage everybody to try it out, which, not sure if we've talked about it before, but I call it bubble hopping. And it's a simple concept.
You told me about this. I love it. Yes. Tell us more about it. I love this.
Bubble hopping is another way of literally going out of your comfort zone. And we all are in bubbles, right? You're in your friendship bubble, and these are people that you're comfortable with, right? They might have the same social upbringing, maybe the same income level, maybe the same political views, whatever your bubble consists of. It's that bubble, maybe just regional, right? They're from the same neighborhood or something like this, or the same other demographic factors, right? And bubble hopping, now you probably already guessed it. It's just, move yourself into a completely different bubble and hang out with people from that bubble and just try to cope, try to make it work, including, for example, this, political view discussion, right? I've just had a conversation with a friend who said there's this elderly home in Central Florida, and there's a community, a strong, vibrant, alive community of these, cute elderly people that are golfing and playing dominoes and God knows what else they do, right? And the election came along. This was the last Trump-Biden election. And one of the elderly men admitted to his friends that he shifted from electing Trump in his first term to now, moving and electing Biden. And this guy got completely moved out of the friendship circle. He is now a loner. It's like a college story. This guy is now a loner in this community. And it's terrible because, he's at the end of his life. There's a strong social bond. And now just because of the political views, this bond is completely gone, right? Somebody talked. He shared this with one person. Somebody talked. The whole community learned. And now he's an outlaw. And it's so sad, right? Because these people, like a lot of us, are not capable of being outside of our bubble and being comfortable, right? And so I think bubble hopping is...
So how do you actually practice it? Do you have any tips how people can get started with this?
Simple things, have social interactions with people from a different demographic.
How do you meet them? Like, what do you do to meet them?
Like, for example, okay, there's different levels, right? Let's say a dinner, right? I made a friend, this is years ago. This is probably solid 3 years ago. And this is a person from a completely different culture. He also has kids, so he's in a family life while I don't. And I barely knew him. And he invited me to a park birthday party. And I'm like, you know what, whatever. Normally, there's a certain filter we all apply in meeting new people and making time for new people, maybe, especially if you already have a busy life, right? And so I was like, whatever, I'll do it. And it was just hanging out with people from a different culture, that eat different food, that talk about different things, right? That in other contexts, I might have been like, oh, you guys only talk about, kids. And that's generally not a big deal. But if you know a different conversation topic all your life, then that might be like surprising to you, right? And this is it doesn't have to be super complex and super difficult, but this is one of them, which we all do when we travel. But then note this, most of us travel and all we do is we go from one Western country to another Western country. And we
Western bubble in the country.
Same bubble. We look at the Eiffel Tower and we say, oh, I'm in Paris, super nice. But what we really do, we drink the same latte, just made by a French person. We also eat wheat bread. It's just a croissant and not a bun. Yeah. And, there's a bit of language differences, but effectively we have the same comforts, right? Versus travel to Iran, take a night bus in Iran. And I don't recommend this to everybody. I'm just saying this is an option where we really bubble hop. And this is easier to see it in this context because it's traveling. We all love travel, right? But let me give you another dimension of trying this out. The ex-girlfriend of a good friend of mine had a project in a class that she took. She had a project to specifically engage with, this was some type of communication class, specifically engage with people that are completely out of her comfort zone, right? Which effectively, they didn't call it that, but they said bubble hop, and what we're discussing right now. They recommended this, and what she did, and she went with another person from her team or from her course, and she decided to go and contact a party on the complete political party on the complete other end of the spectrum of her political views. Right. So she's on the center left side, and she basically contacted the far right party, and she's like, let's have a meeting. Right. That was her project. Right. And she sits an hour long in a conversation, which effectively is a get to know the political party meeting. So what the people do is obviously sell their ideas, try to convince you to join. It's a sales conversation. And so she's sitting there, and basically 55 out of 60 minutes, her and her team partner are not opening their mouths, right? They can't even, because they get bombarded with these views. And but it was an experience, right? It was a testing of boundaries, a testing of your emotional reaction to a completely different world. And so this might not be for everybody, but that's a high level of trying this out, right?
So practically, like, try to do different experiences. Travel is good. Since I know you, like, I feel you're the person who experiments with this the most. I mean, I remember that day I called you. We can mention this. You were saying, I'm on a rally through, I don't know what it was, where exactly it was, but you were on a rally, and And you really practice this and integrate this in your life.
To give context, this was a phenomenal experience that proves, our conversation topic so well. I decided to go on a rally as a pilot, as a car rally, meaning you drive a car from the starting point was Prague, Czechia, and then you go all the way to Siberia, which if you pull up a map is a long way. It's 20,000 kilometers by car through most countries on that route. Most people wouldn't dare to go or would have certain reservations to go. And it's effectively what we just said, right? We're going, and on top of that, the rally was designed in a way that you're not getting a 4x4 AC modern car. You're basically trying to get the shittiest car you can get your hands on in order to make it an experience. And, if you know that you're going to get there, it's not an adventure. So that was fun because we had so many layers of comfort zone crushing experience, going through Kazakhstan and just figuring things out, being in Mongolia and having an issue with the car and without any language skills, without any cultural skills, trying to find a garage that would help you, and then trying to figure out payment and trying to figure out, all these things that, you think you can just transactionally do things everywhere, but it's not that way. Cultures are different, languages matter, all this. And so this was a really, really an effective way to test and push boundaries.
Amazing. So, but as a first step for everybody to bubble hop, what do you reckon? Like just travel and do something that go to different type of hotels, different type of events, or?
I try a different one. I try it in my context because it's such an easy excuse, like with any practice or habit or ritual, if there's a certain friction or if there's a hindrance to actually doing it, you won't do it, right? Mm-hmm. When you've had a tough work month and you get your finally you get your holiday, will you really cross boundaries in your holiday when you want to recover? Not sure. So obviously it's a nice impulse. The 5 to maybe 10% of the listeners that are already adventurous, they might, take this as an inspiration, hopefully more. But I'm not expecting everybody to just dive right into this. But way easier is to do it in your everyday, right? Like just really try next time you jump in the shower to do that, just to pull the lever and to pull it over and open the cold water and then do it for 5 seconds. If you can last, try to do it for more. Do it in very small increments and do it in your everyday life. Or when let's just assume with a bit of stereotyping, you work as a white collar person in your firm and, just take that one break next Tuesday and go into where people, do the manual work, the blue collar people, if they exist in your firm, and just strike up a conversation. Try to ask people about their lives. That's so much easier. And I guarantee, this is without any doubt, you'll be surprised, right? You'll maybe make a friend, but that's maybe more of an extreme. Maybe you'll just have a very inspiring input to your life so far. And so these things are much simpler. Or, comfort zone overcoming might mean something like talk to your parents about something that you've always had a resistance to talk about, right? A topic that's not popular in your family, this kind of thing that strikes up some discomfort, some fears. Do that and then see what, most of the people here will be adults. You're not 17, you're not 14 anymore. You can now have conversations with your parents. And most of us have some communication issues with the people surrounding us. So it's very likely that some of us can take this advice and go to their parents and strike up this conversation and maybe have a nice outcome that they didn't expect.
I love it. This is really good advice. So yeah, thank you. From leadership to balance to ending up at bubble hopping and cold showers. I love it. So, Alex, what's the main thing what you're focusing on, working on, or anything you want to share with the audience? Where can they find you? What should they look up to?
I constantly work on improving my impact, my mission, to share my mission. I imagine a world in which every person is inspired by their leader, also feels empowered to do their best work. And then hopefully at the end of the day, they come back home with more energy, right? Elevated, and not with less. So that's really what I'm working on. And anybody who wants to jump on board with this mission can contact me and support effectively what I do.
Where can they find you?
Oh, most importantly on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, Alex T. Steffen. That's where you can find me professionally. And you can contact me by email as well. But all the information is there. All my social profiles are Alex T. Steffen. And yeah, I'm crafting. So basically, based on this third book that I wrote and published this spring 2022, I'm now developing the Leadership Academy that goes with the book. The book's called, it's German title. The English book's coming out. The English title is yet to be disclosed. German title translates something like The Inner Pioneer. It's about leading change and leading yourself. So the academy is I'm building that right now, and it really teaches the three most important things. We covered some of them, and the order of important pillars really is the emotional aspect, emotional intelligence. The middle one, the second pillar, is people intelligence, right? How do you lead? How do you actually lead people? And then the third one is adaptive intelligence, right? So how do you craft the future, influence the future? And so that academy is in the making, and it builds on a previous academy that was based on my second book. So I'm constantly developing my content, also talking to neuroscientists, talking obviously to a ton of company leaders that are doing a great job of leading well. And yeah, that's the main focus I have right now, besides presenting. So I present in front of leaders, I deliver keynotes to inspire them, to move them to more action, and to basically help them achieve part of the mission I have for the people they lead.
Beautiful, beautiful. When is the English version coming out of the book?
We're talking end of the year. So end of 2022, we'll have the English version. The German audio is now published it will be published beginning of August 2022. And the rest is in the making.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. It was an amazing, insightful conversation. Always great talking to you. So it's a lot for being on here. And let's wrap it up.
Thanks.